Man, it feels good to be back in the Above the Yell studio. Wife and I took a nice holiday vacation up to New York City for about a week, and what an experience it was. It was my first time ever up in the state of New York. For those of you who may have never been, I highly recommend it. Just an awesome time and just a perfect time as well, right before we get set for Texas A&M to take on the Miami Hurricanes in Kyle Field. Kickoff is set for 11 a.m. Saturday morning Central Standard Time. Feels good to be back talking ball. Aggie fans, this is what we've dreamed of. This is what we've expected out of this program for such a long time. What a blessing it is to be here, a blessing to just be talking about Texas A&M and the position that they're in right now in year two under head coach Mike Elko. What a special year it's been. And it would make it even more special, obviously, with a first round college football playoff win on Saturday. So much to dive into this game. I think this is arguably probably the biggest game in Kyle Field, and who knows how long, arguably could be in history. That place is going to be rocking, and I'm so excited to see it. For those of you who might be checking out the channel for the first time, please subscribe, like, and comment with your thoughts around this game. I'm shooting for 250 subscribers by Christmas. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed to the channel already. I'm over 150, shooting for 250 by Christmas. So that is part of my Christmas wish list. Thank you for your support for those of you who have stuck around and stayed faithful to the channel all season. It's been so much fun being able to cover this Texas A&M team, and I sure hope it continues. We at least get to see our Aggies play one more game on Saturday. Obviously, my hope is that it's 3 more games after that. But we'll take it one game at a time. So much to dive into in this matchup, so let's get into it. College Game Day will be live from College Station for the first time this season for this matchup Saturday morning. Texas A&M is 1-11 when game day is in town. That's not a record you want to have. The lone win came against Tennessee in overtime in 2016. The odds are certainly not in A&M's favor when it comes to this metric, but being at home does help. Can Texas A&M kick down another barrier this year? They've kicked down so many already with the big win over Notre Dame on the road, winning in Death Valley for the first time since 1992. So many barriers that A&M really has had to kick down this year, and it's been so fun to watch. Can they do it again on Saturday? Aggies will be facing a championship level roster with the Miami Hurricanes. I think people kind of wrote Miami off after the losses to Louisville and to SMU. But really, since then, Miami has been playing probably their best football over the last 4 games of the regular season. After those losses to Louisville, and especially after the loss to SMU, they've really been in playoff mode. Miami has had to just basically dominate their last 4 opponents after that SMU loss, and really that's what they've done. They had to make a statement in each one of those games for the college football playoff committee, and they've certainly done it. They bring one of the best defenses in college football. They're 11th in total defense, 30th in passing, 7th in rushing, and 6th in scoring. So really a top 50 defense across the board. And when you have a defense that stout, you're going to probably make it pretty far, as Miami has this season. The Hurricanes are loaded defensively. They've got edge rusher Ruben Bain. He'll most likely be talked about a lot in all of the preview episodes you see for this game, as he should be. You've got cornerback Keontae Scott. He'll most likely be a starting NFL cornerback before long. You got defensive lineman Akeem Mesidor, just a game wrecker on the D line alongside Ruben Bain. You got cornerback Jacoby Thomas, who leads this Hurricanes defense with 4 picks this season. Then you've got linebacker Muhammad Toure leads the Hurricanes with 54 total tackles. Really, their top 5 leading tacklers are 2 defensive two linebackers, two cornerbacks, and one defensive lineman. These guys, they're really elite on all levels on that defense, and they're especially elite on their front seven. This will probably be the best front seven A&M has faced up to this point of the season. They faced some good ones. I think Notre Dame, when they played Notre Dame, obviously it was still early in the season, but Notre Dame they have a good front seven, and then some other SEC programs that A&M faced this year. Some that come to mind were LSU at the time that they played them. Florida, even at the time they played Florida, had a good front seven, and then obviously Texas, the Longhorns, have a really good front seven, and we saw what happened in that game. A&M's wide receivers versus Miami secondaries will be a fascinating matchup. That is one I will be watching and keeping an eye on. Ruben Bain will be a force to reckon with. I think you got to find a way if you're A&M to contain him. A&M struggled against South Carolina's star edge rusher Dylan Stewart about a month ago, and I think Ruben Bain is just as talented as Dylan Stewart, if not more talented. I think Ruben Bain is most likely going to be picked on the first day of the 2026 NFL Draft. I think he's a round one pick from everything that I've seen. But yeah, you've got to know where Ruben Bain is. You've got to find a way uh, to contain him. I think A&M, as far as the offensive line goes, they're coming off one of their probably worst performances against Texas. Obviously, crowd noise had a lot to do, I think, with what we saw from the offensive line in that Texas game. But something to keep an eye on is this A&M offensive line versus the Miami defensive line. And then offensively for the Hurricanes, Malachi Toney. He's the name to know in this game. He's a star true freshman wide receiver who's tallied 970 yards and 7 touchdowns for the Hurricanes. He's basically, to me, he's Miami's version of KC Concepcion, and we know how special Concepcion's been this year. They love dialing up screen packages to Tony, which is really where he seems to be at his best, but he can also stretch the field. He's, I believe, 5'10, 5'11, a little bit shorter framed wide receiver, but he's really fast. He's got good hands, good speed. He's a great route runner. So gotta find a way if you're Des Ricks and Will Lee. I'm sure they're gonna match up against this guy, depending on the defensive packages that they're in. But going to be interesting to see how A&M tries to contain Malachi Toney. Carson Beck, he's been playing his best football probably of his career over the last 4 games. He's completing nearly 80% of his passes. He's thrown for an average of almost 300 yards every game in the last 4 games, and he has an 11-1 touchdown to interception ratio in those 4 games. The thing about Carson Beck, going back to those games against Louisville and SMU, obviously not a great day for him. I think he had 4 interceptions against Louisville, and I think he probably had 1 or 2 picks against SMU. So Carson Beck, him and Marcel Reed, I think, have some strange similarities. Obviously, Carson Beck is not really a dual threat quarterback, whereas Marcel Reed is. But the thing about both of them is when they're on, they can be an elite quarterback, but when they're off, they're really off. And I think that can be said for Carson Beck. He's kind of he's had his moments of being really, really good, but he's had his moments of just being bad too and being cold. Miami, they like to run a dual kind of running back situation with Mark Fletcher and Gerard Pringle. Pringle, I think his explosiveness is probably the biggest concern that I have. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry, which leads the running back room for Miami. I expect him to be a big factor for their offense on Saturday. And I think part of my concern is just how porous this Texas A&M rush defense has been at times. I think A&M kind of as far as the secondary goes, they've done a really good job of keeping everything in front. But there's been some run fit issues all season for A&M. They've been gashed by the run. They got gashed once again by Quintravion Wisner in the Texas game. Really going back to the Missouri game a couple months ago against the Tigers, they they really kind of got gashed by Ahmad Hardy. Fortunately, A&M was able to score enough and to get out with a win. But I think this rush defense has been extremely suspect at times. So that is something I'm concerned about, something to keep an eye on, especially when you have a explosive running back like Gerard Pringle, and then Mark Fletcher. He's kind of been the anchor, I think, for Miami's offense at running back. He leads the team in rushing. So both of those guys going to be big impact players for Miami. I think it comes down to two critical factors for me. One, the trenches, and two, quarterback play. Both of these teams, A&M and Miami, they have phenomenal defensive lines. They've got really, really good offensive lines. So I think it starts in the trenches. Who can win this battle? Who can win in the trenches? I think whoever can, and I think both teams are extreme. They're both very capable of dominating the other. And I think whoever comes out on top of that matchup is ultimately going to win the football game. And as I said, quarterback play, Marcel Reed has thrown 4 interceptions in the last 2 games against Power 4 opponents. He threw 2 against Texas. He threw 2 against South Carolina. I think for me, from my perspective, it's got to be better. We need the Marcel Reed that we saw against Missouri. He was extremely efficient, probably had one of his most complete games, if not most complete game, against Missouri on the road. He had a really good game against Arkansas, the Razorbacks, earlier in the season. He had a really good game, obviously, against Notre Dame at the beginning of the season. And we need Marcel just to take care of the football. He's been shaky at times. He's prone to throwing off platform. But I think if you can find a way, if Klein can find a way to get Marcel in rhythm again and comfortable early, I like A&M's chances. For Carson Beck, I think the same thing can be true. If A&M defensively is able to get home, make Carson Beck uncomfortable early, I think A&M could have a lot of success. Um, both can be good when they're on, but also both can be bad when they're off. For A&M offensively, I think it sounds like at least all signs are kind of pointing towards Le'Veon Moss being back. He's been out with an injury for the past 4, 5, maybe even 6 games. He's been a huge part of this offense. He was obviously the starting running back for A&M coming into the season. Hopefully his return will be as impactful as we anticipate. I don't know how that's really going to look. It's been pretty hush-hush, pretty quiet, no definitive answers. But I think if Le'Veon Moss does play, yeah, surely hope that his impact is felt. I don't know how many touches he will get, but really, to me, as far as my perspective, this seems, this very well could be the very last game of the season. Very well could be the very last game for Le'Veon Moss in a Texas A&M uniform. So I got to think, you know, with that thought in mind, you would think that Le'Veon Moss would just be full go, especially just the time that he's been away with that lower leg injury. So we'll see. Keep an eye on that. As I said, Marcel got to get comfortable early. I think run the ball like he has been known to do. I think we're going to probably see some situations where Marcel Reed does scramble and run. I think if you can get him in those positions, allows him to get comfortable a lot sooner. I know Miami defensively, they're really good. They've been really good against dual threat quarterbacks up to this point of the season. But I think in order to get Marcel comfortable, maybe dial up some runs for him. And then for receivers, for Concepcion, for Craver, for Ashton Bethel Roman, I think catch the ball. They've struggled in the last 2 games against Power 4 opponents, against South Carolina and against Texas. Obviously, you want to get the ball to these guys. They've been phenomenal all season, but they struggled. They struggled with drops in the first half of the South Carolina game, and they struggled with drops in the second half of the Texas game. And so for me, it's really that simple. Get the ball to those guys, and for them, just complete the catch. Defensively for A&M, Cassius Howell really, I mean, he was a non-factor against Texas there in the Lone Star Showdown. Quintravion Wisner ran all over A&M, and I think the question for me is, what does the bounce back look like? Starting linebacker Scooby Williams will be back from the sounds of it, which will be a huge help. A&M defensively, they've had issues with run fits, so getting Scooby back, he's been just at times he's been just a phenomenal linebacker, really good at making splash plays when it's needed. And then for Des Ricks, Will Lee, there at the cornerback position, will most likely be the last game in a Texas A&M uniform. Could be the last game for Will Lee in a Texas A&M uniform. Really interested to see how Des Ricks and Will Lee are able to match up against Malachi Tony and Keelan Marion. These are both really talented wide receivers for Miami. So that as a matchup, I will be keeping an eye on. And I think defensively for A&M, you got to make Beck uncomfortable because he's really not been very good under pressure. Fortunately for A&M, they will have the home field advantage being at Kyle Field. That is a silver lining for me. I think anytime they can play at home in that atmosphere, I think gives them an extra 3 points. And I think that this game, Miami and A&M, I think the spread the spread that I last saw was 3.5 points. I think 3 of those points are simply just having home field advantage at Kyle Field. Man, I'm excited for this one. I'm excited to see how this plays out. This is probably the best round one college football game. You can make the argument that it's Oklahoma and Alabama. I think people are really excited to see that matchup once again, even though they already played in the regular season. But I think these two teams between A&M and Miami, they have a lot of similarities. And I think it's going to really just be two strength on strength teams going at it on Saturday. And I think it's going to be a phenomenal matchup for round one. It wouldn't be Christmas without a wish list. So I'm going to be bold here. My wish list for this game, here it is. 1, don't get gashed by the run. Texas A&M, don't get gashed by the run. Force Miami to be one-dimensional. When I mean one-dimensional, really force Carson Beck to win the game with his arm. He's able to do that. But I think if A&M is able to stop the run, then it opens up a lot more opportunities for them to get home to Carson Beck. 2, Marcel plays better than Carson Beck. As I said, this is probably going to be a quarterback battle. Whichever quarterback plays better is going to put their team obviously in a better position to win. But I think these two quarterbacks, they have some similarities. So I think if Marcel is able to just play better than Carson Beck, I like our odds. And then lastly, win the turnover battle. Texas A&M defensively, I think the way that they're built, the kind of attack that they go by defensively, they've not been really good at forcing turnovers up to this point of the season. But I think changing that Saturday would certainly help efforts, especially having the home crowd. Okay, that's my wish list. Brings me to my final prediction. A&M has exceeded my expectations really all season. Why not keep that rolling? Give me Texas A&M 27-24. I think whoever gets in the 30s has a really good chance of winning, but I'm going to stay in the 20s with both of these teams. I think both have really good defenses, and defense typically travels. So Miami's probably going to be bringing it, and then A&M being at home. They're going to have the home crowd. They're going to be hyped, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. Let's go win a football game. Aggies, let's go win a football game. One more, and then one more after that, and then one more after that. But we'll take it one game at a time. What a privilege, as I said, and a blessing it is to be here be home talking ball. This is as I said, this is what we've waited for so long as Aggie fans. So just enjoy it, relish in it, and take it moment by moment. Even if it's ugly on Saturday, it's still so awesome to be in this position. So for those of you who have stuck around for this episode, thank you for your viewership. Thank you for your commitment to the channel. Thank you for sticking around. Please subscribe. As I said, I've got a lofty goal by Christmas. It's only possible with your help. So please subscribe. But for now, I will check out. Look for a post game reaction episode shortly after the game concludes on Saturday. In between now and then, just enjoy it. Enjoy the build up. Enjoy the love. Enjoy the passion for it. And we'll see you here next time. Thank you guys. Gig 'em and God bless.